Welcome, I'm Ryan Hicks, and this is Modern Business, the podcast to learn from franchise business leaders and explore new business technology. Our community is about sharing knowledge and tools that help us achieve our goals in business and beyond. Thanks for being here, and welcome to Modern Business. Modern Business Podcast number 1, numero uno, folks, and I thank you for being here. I am your humble host, recording from the gorgeous South Bay in the heart of Silicon Valley, and I have just 3 bullet points to cover here on this very first episode. And by the way, this is very often how I'll do things. I have some notes scribbled and scrabbled here on my sheet of paper, but I have 3 points I want to illustrate. And first, I want to kick things off with a short story to kind of set the stage for what this show's about and for what's to come. So let's go back to the 1960s space race when I, your humble host Ryan Hicks, clearly wasn't even a twinkle in my parents' eyes, but I read a lot. And I've read that NASA in the 1960s hit a problem. The astronauts couldn't ride in space because the ordinary pins, they don't work in zero gravity. But according to story and legend, NASA hired a guy by the name of Paul Fisher, and his job was to design a pin that would ride in space. Months later, after millions in research, Paul came up with a solution, and NASA ended up creating a state-of-the-art pin that can work in zero gravity. It performed in a vacuum. It could cope with all the different temperature ranges that would exist. But of course, other folks in the space race had the same problem. Mainly the Russians, the cosmonauts, what they were called, they had the same problem. But what they did was use a pencil. And this perfectly illustrates what all too often happens in business. We, as earthly beings in general, tend to overthink things. In business especially, we overcomplicate. We often focus on the 80% of things that don't matter and neglect the 20% of things that is our bread and butter. But on the flip side of that coin, if you're not innovating, if you're not getting ahead of the competition, you're at risk of stagnating. So you have to maintain a balance between those two. And if you think your brand's proverbial shit don't stink and that you're the dominant player in the industry and these little emerging businesses or brands can't catch up with you, you're definitely walking a fine line, because in the modern times that we live, I would say a quote that I wrote down here is, "The junkyards of business blunders are littered with stale businessmen and women that thought they were untouchable." And that is oh so true. I could list a ton of examples. But folks, oftentimes business leaders get comfortable with their positions, and the little guys, the folks who launch a business empire from a garage in California, not too far from where I'm sitting, or the folks that launch a business out of the back of a Volkswagen van, they quote unquote come out of nowhere. But this is my thesis kind of on this show, that there has to be a balance of the simple-minded, no-nonsense thinking, the tried-and-true things that quote-unquote just work, but also keep an eye towards the pie-in-the-sky technologies that completely turn industries upside down, and the technologies that can give your business huge advantages over the competition just by adopting it early and getting out ahead of it. So on this show, it is my job to kind of filter these things out. And I will say that I believe that we're sitting in a point in history and a point in time that is very unique, because there have been a lot of changes. The internet has obviously changed a thing or two. The emergence of the social world and all of that's kind of playing out right now. And I think we're hitting a period of much more rapid advancement with a lot of things coming like voice, and there's a lot of things changing. And so there's absolutely a place for this show, for Modern Business, as a lot of things are changing in the technology world. So transitioning here, I want to tell you a little bit more about my business philosophy personally. And on this show, I kind of wanted to introduce myself a little bit to the world who probably doesn't have any clue who I am, to what my mantra is. And in order to do that, I first kind of want to paint a picture of the way that I see the business landscape in general. And the following is kind of the lens through which I see the world of commerce. And that lens is quite simple. There are three main components. There's one underlying theme in this fast-paced, hyper-connected world that we live in today. Number one, you have businesses. And this is obviously a gross, simplistic generalization, but number one, you have businesses. Number two, you have customers. And number three, you have the technology that makes it easier to run your business and be more productive and gain new customers. So let me just unpack these three things really quick as I'm kind of freestyling here. Businesses come in many shapes and sizes. Moreover, there are many different types of business models: direct sales, subscription, and SaaS, which is a form of licensing. There's franchising, and the list goes on. And franchising happens to be a model that is very near and dear to me personally, and it's where I've chosen to put my focus and expertise during my 20s and 30s. I believe that all entrepreneurs and managers, even outside of this industry, can absolutely learn a lot by looking at how the world of franchising operates. And I'll be doing a lot of that here. It won't be limited to just that, absolutely not. Actually, my next guest on the next show is a CEO of a very large brand that is not from the franchise industry, but I will be covering franchising a ton here. So if you don't think that, for example, you can't learn a thing or two if you're a startup entrepreneur in the Valley, if you can't learn a thing or two from Jimmy John, who founded Jimmy John's, then you're definitely listening to the wrong channel here. So I'll be doing a lot of that. And the flip side is also true from outside of the franchise world. There's a lot that can be learned. And I just think there's a big opportunity kind of with the interplay of those two things. So some of what I talk about will play into that. Customers. So businesses obviously must have happy customers, and it's better to have more of them as opposed to less of them. Thus, you have to have systems in place to find potential customers, convert those customers into paying ones, and then deliver whatever it is that you promised them. It's very simple. But where it gets complex is take a look at what's happening in the world. Customer behaviors are changing. Their preferences are changing. I don't know if you've noticed, but where their attention is changing. Their expectations are changing, how they find products and services and news and information. All of this stuff has changed. So you got businesses and you've got customers. Their preferences are changing, and the technology that underlies that whole process is rapidly advancing. And we live in I believe, a fascinating time because it's the tech is progressing so fast. And as we looked at above, it's changing the way that customers behave. So my question for you is, your business keeping up with, or are you stagnating? And so I believe that we're living in probably the single most exciting time ever to be a business owner or a manager. Just think about the fact that there's 7.5 billion people on the planet today. Only 2 billion of them are on the internet right now. And literally billions will be connected over the next few years. You've got Google, you've got Facebook. All of these companies are even I forgot Elon Musk's other company, the solar company, is also working on providing technology that'll give free internet to the world. And so there are billions of people coming onto the internet in the next decade, but even shorter, I would say next 5 years. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But the underlying theme is that technology, connectivity, it's changing how businesses find and serve customers. It's changing how customers behave. New products and categories are being created. And this creates opportunities and even threats for business managers that don't have an eye out towards it. So my goal as an entrepreneur, as a technology evangelist, is to help business owners and managers kind of navigate these things. But as this advancement happens, it creates challenges. It's hard to keep up with the times. There's a lot of noise. So that's what a lot of this podcast will be aimed to do, is to help cut through some of that noise by bringing raw advice and gold nuggets from the people who know what they're talking about, And I'll be doing this through brand spotlights and vendor spotlights, showcasing technology and showing how brands are using technology, through meeting owners and founders and managers and giving their success stories and sharing the tools that they use. I'll also be creating some YouTube videos, obviously podcasts, as well as articles for the folks that don't really like to listen. I'll be publishing a lot of that stuff. So definitely follow me and find me on the different platforms. And I'll link to my handles. But the main thing to note here is that we're a community of business managers and owners who are about learning and growing. And that extends well beyond business. So a lot of the things that I'll bring will also kind of bring in the outside of business stuff, quote unquote, because it affects everything, and bringing some gold nuggets, because I get the opportunity to meet with a lot of really phenomenal business owners, and I am naturally curious. I ask a ton of questions, and sometimes my jaw hits the floor at some of the stuff I learned. So I kind of want to share some of that. And this kind of brings me full circle to what I would call my personal mantra, the way that I navigate through this crazy world. And it's based on 3 simple words. And the point of this, by the way, is just to kind of share a little bit, kind of open up a little bit and share about myself. Is my personal mantra is 3 simple words: ask, learn, grow. Number 1 is ask quality questions. I believe that the quality of your life or your business is based on the quality of the questions that you ask, because that dictates the answers and thus how your actions unfold and what you do. Second is always be learning. I believe that everyone is a student and everyone is a teacher, and we all have something to learn from each other. It'll actually be quite interesting to have the startup tech entrepreneurs out here in the Valley taking notes from, and on the life lessons and the business lessons from a brick and mortar founder who barely knows how to set up an email account, and vice versa. So we're going to have a lot of that going on. It's going to be interesting. The third thing is stay focused on growth, both personally and professionally. You either grow or you stagnate, and stagnation is moving back. It's death. And the last thing, about a month ago, I was asked a question that it was tough to answer at the time, but since then I've given it a lot of thought. I was asked, they said, Ryan, how would you define your business philosophy in 10 words or less? And so I had to think. It knocked me back. I had to think about it. And now I think it took me about a month to kind of really flesh that through. But I can define it in under 5 words. And that would be, this is kind of corny, but that would be handshakes and rocking chairs. And let me tell you what that represents. So handshakes represents the value I place on doing business the right way and doing right by people. Sure, paperwork should be in place. It's a formality. But when doing business with people of integrity, a handshake is enough. My word is my bond. I'll always do the right thing. I expect the same in return. And you should too. Relationships over money, for sure. The second thing, and that is rocking chairs, which symbolizes the ideal of being proud of my life works and the legacy that I build when the day comes that I sit on that quote unquote proverbial rocking chair looking over my past career. So that's my business philosophy: handshakes and rocking chairs. My personal mantra is ask, grow, learn. And if you believe that your values align with that, I think we'll definitely get along. So stay tuned. I thank you for listening. That was all I have for you as I kind of opened up a little bit there, but welcome to the Modrn Business family. Maybe we'll dub it, I don't know, we'll make up some names for it. Mobiz Nation. I don't know. I'll give that some thought. But this is definitely going to be fun, folks. Thanks for joining. I'll be posting content probably 2-3 times a week, so stay tuned. Thanks.